From the beginning of the show, we knew that Dexter Morgan was playing the most insane double life possible. A killer working inside Miami Metro, surrounded by detectives who literally hunt people like him. And thanks to the revival, we also know that this luck does not last forever. Eventually, the mask slips, the case closes in, and Dexter stops walking out of cases with a cute excuse and a clean shirt. So the real question isn't just how did he get away with it for 8 seasons. It's how many times did he almost not get away with it? How close did the show come to ending years earlier because one trophy fell out of his pocket, or one cop stayed 5 minutes later at the marina? Today, we're building a full timeline of those near misses, every moment where prison or a bullet was one step away. Dexter is never actually safe. He's just temporarily not caught in Season 1, Episode 2. Dokes is already giving him that "I'm watching you" look across a crime scene, the same creepy vibes that made Dokes stalk him later are there from day one, but it takes years for that suspicion to harden into a real case. And that delay is the only reason the show lasts, as long as it does. Fans remember the big swing moments, Dokes locked in the cage with Dexter's knives, La Guerta standing in front of her Bay Harbor butcher board, like it's her personal conspiracy wall, Deb walking in on the kill table and seeing her brother with a knife raised. Those scenes feel huge, because we know if any one of them plays out slightly differently, Dexter is done. Credits roll. No lumberjack, no revival. There are smaller details that were just as lethal. The trophy box sitting in his air conditioner, the GPS records from his boat at the marina, the way his work on the Bay Harbor butcher case literally points back to his own dumping ground. This video isn't a character study. First, it's a forensic reconstruction of risk. We're going season by season, episode by episode tracking. Every time evidence witnesses or institutional pressure almost blow up Dexter's secret. We'll look at the early weird looks at cases when colleagues first sense something is off, then move into the physical evidence era where the blood slides and missing bodies start talking louder. Then Dexter's fake smile. From there, the human threats stack up. Dokes Rita, Deb Lila, Miguel Quinn, Hannah, each one circling the truth from a different angle. By the time we reach La Guerta, reopening the Bay Harbor butcher case, and the final collapse in the revival, we'll be able to see exactly how thin Dexter's margin really was. Was he a genius predator? Or, just a guy saved by other people's mistakes, and never looks twice at the missing hours, the late-night boat trips, or the perfect alibis? Then there's opportunity. Even if you're suspicious, you need time, access, and authority to poke holes in Dexter's life. You have to be close enough to notice the patterns, but not so close that you're emotionally blinded like Deb. You need to run plates, pull reports, maybe even follow him. That's why Dokes, La Guerta, Quinn, and eventually the FBI matter so much. They're the rare people who both smell something off and are in a position to actually investigate. And finally, the big one, evidence. Dexter's entire existence is built around making sure nothing physical survives his ritual. No fibers, no fingerprints, no usable blood, bodies dumped in the ocean, tools and plastic destroyed. Harry's Code isn't just about who Dexter kills. It's a full operating system for never leaving a trail. He works inside forensics, understands chain of custody, knows which tests get run and which corners get cut. He tailors his kills to slide right through those gaps. He's not invincible. the same things that make him effective also make him vulnerable. Dexter needs trophies. Those blood slides are a quiet compulsion that almost no real killer would risk, and they become one of the most dangerous objects in the entire series. He also can't resist inserting himself into cases, hovering at scenes, reconstructing attacks with way too much enthusiasm. Every time he does that, he's essentially handing people a chance to notice how wrong his reactions are. Add in his emotional blind spots, underestimating people like Rita, Deb, or Miguel, and you get this weird paradox. The man who understands evidence perfectly does not understand people nearly as well, and he literally works with homicide detectives all day. That's not just dramatic irony, it's a built-in pressure cooker. To track how close he comes to being exposed, we're going to follow 4 kinds of pressure: practical and logistical red flags, physical evidence that points back to him, human witnesses who see too much, and institutional investigations. Internal affairs, the FBI, and Miami metro politics grinding away in the background. Season 1 is where all of that is born. It's the origin of suspicion season, where the audience and Dokes both start to realize Dexter doesn't fit. So now let's go to those early episodes and watch the first time someone looks at him at a crime scene and silently goes, "That's not normal." Season 1, the first cracks in the mask. Season 1 is where Dexter's mask looks the most convincing on the surface, and the most wrong if you're really paying attention. On paper, he's harmless, leaving bloodless bodies, doll parts, and messages that only he fully understands. That forces Dexter into the spotlight. He's suddenly way more involved in briefings at every major scene and visibly rattled in ways he can't fully hide. When the Barbie doll tableau appears in his own apartment, Dexter has to fake being shocked while internally geeking out that someone knows his secret. That double reaction? People feel that something is off, even if they can't name it. In Season 1, the danger isn't really about physical evidence yet. There are no blood slides being cataloged, no lab reports pointing back to Dexter. It's all behavioral and logistical. He disappears from the station at weird times. He shows up at scenes faster than some uniforms. He's always available for the gruesome stuff. Never burned out, never truly upset. In a room full of jaded cops, that reads as wrong. We get those little looks from Dokes, those "what is your deal?" stares that tell us the mask isn't as airtight as Dexter thinks. By the back half of the season, the ice truck killer investigation drags Dexter's personal life into the case. Deb starts dating Rudy, who is secretly Dexter's brother, and the killer they're hunting. When Deb is kidnapped, Dexter's absences and weird priorities suddenly matter a lot more. He's unreachable at key moments, then miraculously helpful. No one can prove anything, but the pattern is there. And then we hit the finale at the shipping yard. Deb has been taken. Dexter is juggling brother, code, and cover story all at once. And he shows up with that now infamous "I was buying furniture from Thailand" excuse. Even for Miami Metro, that is insane. Dokes hears it, looks at Dexter, and you can almost see the word liar form in his head. Season 1 ends with no handcuffs, no lab match, but one kidnapping and one ridiculous excuse permanently raised the baseline suspicion around Dexter. From this point on, every absence, every late-night errand is going to hit different. And in the next season, That's exactly when things start to close in. The double life schedule, nights of killing, days of forensics. And that's where Dexter's real problem starts. Once everyone is quietly side-eyeing your excuses, you can't afford a single sloppy night. Because the first thing we need to recognize is that Dexter's entire double life in Season 1 runs on a brutal, unsustainable schedule. By day, he's the reliable blood spatter guy at Miami Metro. Full shifts, full cases, always on call when a new blood guy who loves his job too much. So when he shows up tired, distracted, or vanishes from a crime scene debrief, nobody files a report. They write it off as Dexter being Dexter. That same pattern creates a trap. Once people are used to his routine, any break in it becomes louder. When he misses a call during Deb's kidnapping, when he appears at the shipping yard with that furniture from Thailand line, those aren't just random weird moments. They're glitches in a system everyone had unconsciously mapped out. You can almost feel the room silently asking, "Wait, how did he get here so fast?" And this is exactly where Dokes becomes dangerous. As a former Special Forces soldier, he's literally trained to notice patterns, and then notice when those patterns fracture. He watches Dexter show up fresh and curious at scene after scene, sometimes before other detectives, sometimes with way too much enthusiasm for a killer's technique. In Circle of Friends, Season 1, Episode 7, Dexter's confidence that the so-called ice truck suspect isn't their man isn't just good profiling to Dokes. It's a red flag. How does this lab geek keep being right about killers? The more Dexter kills, the more moving parts he has to manage. More late nights, more mysterious boat trips, more lies about lab work and errands. Every new body means another alibi to juggle, another chance to collide with a real case timeline. For him, all it takes is one bad overlap, one victim tied too close to his workday, one surveillance camera on the wrong dock, and the whole schedule collapses. In the next stretch of the timeline, we'll see how those overlapping worlds start grinding against each other until something finally snaps. First, practical red flags. The night Dexter almost slips S1E5, and that overlap hits fast is how early the show starts stress testing Dexter's schedule. In Season 1, Episode 5, Love American Style, Dexter is already trying to be a full-time blood guy, part-time boyfriend, part-time brother, and full-time serial killer. That's 4 jobs and one very limited calendar. On paper, this episode is about a human trafficking case. Cuban women smuggled into Miami, one of them connected to a new victim on Dexter's table. But underneath, it's really about Dexter losing track of time and almost losing his cover. He's obsessed with tracking Jorge and Teo Ruiz, the coyotes responsible. So while Deb is grinding through the official case and Rita is dealing with her ex, Paul, Dexter is off doing research. Translation: stalking his next targets instead of answering his phone. There's a key stretch where Dexter disappears to follow the Ruiz brothers' boat. He watches them, studies their pattern after a night of surveillance. She snaps, "You disappear every time this case heats up, Dex. What's going on?" He fires back with another vague line. "Just got pulled into some lab work. Blood doesn't analyze itself." No details, no urgency. Just a placeholder sentence to fill the silence. From the outside, this is suspicious because normal people don't vanish in the middle of family crises or show up to work looking oddly rested after a night trailing killers on the water. Most characters file it under Dexter is strange but harmless. They see social awkwardness, not operational security. Dokes is the exception. To him, these absences look tactical. A guy who's always gone when a case spikes. Always calm, never rattled, always with a thin excuse. That's not just creepy, that's tradecraft. His special forces brain tags Dexter as someone running his own off-the-books mission. And this is only episode 5. If Dokes is already clocking the pattern here, what happens once the bodies, the timelines, and Dexter's secrets start lining up a little too perfectly? Dokes' predator instinct, suspicion without evidence. And that's where Dokes becomes dangerous, because for him, a pattern is never just a coincidence, it's a target. The first thing we need to remember is who this guy actually is before he ever side-eyes Dexter across a crime scene. Dokes isn't just some angry sergeant yelling for TV drama. He's ex-Special Forces, a combat vet who's operated in places where misreading one person gets your whole team killed. This is a man trained to read micro-expressions, body language, breathing patterns. In other words, the harmless lab geek act Dexter sells to everyone else. That's the exact kind of cover Dokes has spent his career ripping apart. So when we cut to those early season 1 scenes, you can feel the clash immediately. In the pilot, while everyone's crowding around Dexter's blood spatter insights like he's a magician, Dokes is in the background just staring. No smile, no banter, just that hard, unblinking look. He watches Dexter move around the bodies, way too calm, way too comfortable. Most people are fighting nausea. Dexter is practically energized. When Dexter calls one of the ice truck killers, displays beautiful, everyone else kind of shrugs it off as dark humor. Dokes doesn't. He just snaps, "You're a creepy mother. You know that?" There's no joke in his voice. That line is Dokes putting a label on what everyone else only feels subconsciously. Something about this guy is wrong. And that was not the only time Dokes clocked Dexter's strange reactions. In Circle of Friends, in Season 1, Episode 7, at the jail, long before there's a single piece of physical evidence. This is the real shift. For the first time inside Miami Metro, someone isn't laughing off Dexter's creepy vibe or hiding behind his helpful lab reports. Someone is treating him as a potential threat. Dokes doesn't have a case. He barely has language for it. But his gut is locked on. And as Dexter keeps showing up, calm, prepared, and just a little too interested in every new body, that gut feeling is only going to intensify until suspicion turns into full-on surveillance, and then things get truly dangerous. The Deb kidnapping. When Dexter's alibi completely breaks, Season 1, Episode 12. And that gut feeling finally gets its first real test in the worst possible way, when Deborah Morgan disappears. This isn't just another body on a table anymore. In Season 1, Episode 12, the ice truck killer takes Dexter's own sister, and suddenly every cop in Miami is on high alert, watching each other, clocking every movement, every absence. Is how different Dexter looks inside that chaos. The department goes into full crisis mode. Command posts, phone trees, everybody chained to their desks or out, running leads. Dokes is in pure soldier mode, barking orders, barely sleeping. And Dexter? He keeps slipping off the grid because he's not just hunting a killer. He's managing a secret relationship with him. Timeline-wise, it's a mess. While Lagerta and Dokes are coordinating searches, Dexter is off visiting Rudy/Brian, following his own trail, and eventually walking straight into that macabre apartment with the blood-soaked bridal tableau. He's unreachable at key moments, not answering calls, not where a normal forensics tech should be when a colleague is missing. When everyone is scrambling to lock down crime scene logistics, Dexter is alone with the ice truck killer, negotiating Deb's life on his own terms. From Doak's perspective, that's insane. This is a cop family emergency. Nobody disappears without saying where they're going. Dexter keeps doing exactly that, and every unexplained hour is another tick mark in Doak's mental case file. He can't prove anything, but the pattern is getting way too strange to ignore. Then we get the payoff. Deb is rescued at the shipping yard. The scene is flooded with uniforms, sirens, raw emotion. Deb is traumatized. Rudy is dead, and Dexter walks in late, calm, almost eerily composed for a brother whose sibling was just on a kill table, and Doak's snaps. We get that legendary. Dexter steps into the crime scene tape, and Doak's that memory is going to fuel the next phase. Not just side-eyeing Dexter in the bullpen, but following him, tailing him, and waiting for the next time his story doesn't add up. Why? Absences alone don't catch him. Yet, that memory of Dexter at the shipping yard is huge. But here's the frustrating part. It still isn't enough to actually nail him. Doak's has a story, a vibe, a creepy mental replay, but not a case. And in a police department, vibes don't go in the evidence locker. The first thing we need to look at is how high the bar really is inside Miami Metro. Being missing for a few hours, giving a bad excuse, even showing up at the exact place your kidnapped sister is being held. That's suspicious, but it's not probable cause. Cops vanish during shifts all the time for informant meetings, side errands, or because a lieutenant dragged them somewhere off book. If Doak's walks into Laguerta's office and says Dexter's schedule is weird, she's going to ask, "Okay, and what crime are you alleging?" Silence. Take Dexter's furniture from Thailand line. Any normal person hears that and goes, "Yeah, that's ridiculous." Officially, all Dexter did was rush to a major crime scene involving his own sister after being unreachable. Is that shady? Absolutely. Is it something you can put in an arrest warrant? Not even close. What really keeps him safe in season 1 is the armor of his reputation. Dexter isn't some slacker detective. He's the brilliant blood guy who solves cases, stays late, and helps everyone else look good. We constantly see Batista, Deb, and even Laguerta praising his work. When someone that useful acts strange, people bend reality to protect the asset. He's just intense. He's under a lot of pressure. It's easier to believe the helpful coworker is quirky than that he's a secret killer. And then there's the ice truck killer chaos. The entire department is drowning. Bodies on ice, severed limbs, personal connections to Deb, the whole city watching. In that environment, everyone is sleep deprived, stressed, and traumatized. So when Dexter disappears or looks zoned out at a scene, the default explanation isn't serial killer, it's burnout. The case itself gives him cover. Doak's is the only one whose baseline is different. His special forces background and his own darkness mean he reads Dexter's mask as a threat, not just social awkwardness. But even his suspicion is still mostly instinctual. He can list moments. Dexter smiling at blood. Dexter too calm around death. Dexter lying about where he's been. But he can't connect any of that to a specific homicide without sounding paranoid. He creeps me out doesn't exactly make internal affairs jump reopening instead of a crime scene. That pilot crime scene in Season 1, Episode 1. We open on that abandoned lot. The chopped up body parts of the Tamiami butcher victim laid out like some deranged installation piece. Most cops walk into something like that and go straight to procedure. Secure the perimeter. Catalog the evidence. Crack a dark joke to keep it together. Dexter steps in, and you can practically feel his pulse quicken. He's not horrified. He's impressed. He walks around the body parts, eyes locked on the blood, and he has that inner monologue about the killer's technique. He calls it neat, clean, professional, admiring the cuts, the lack of blood, the precision. It's framed almost like he's praising a colleague's work. There's even that moment where the chair is spinning slowly, ropes dangling, and Dexter just watches the rotation and focuses on the blood patterns, like he's appreciating brushstrokes on a canvas. For everyone else, this is a nightmare. For Dexter, it's beautiful, and the show doesn't even hide it. He literally says, "I love my job," with this little smile, while everyone else looks nauseous. That's not standard lab geek behavior. That's a predator recognizing another predator's hunt. Someone in that room is going to notice the creepy energy, and that someone is James Dokes. Dokes' reaction in that scene is the first real collision between Dexter's secret and a cop's instincts. While LaGuerta flirts and Masuka cracks off-color jokes, Dokes just stares at Dexter. No banter, no smile, just pure disgust. He clocks the way Dexter leans in too close, how his eyes light up at the gore. He even calls him a creep right there, like his brain can't let it slide. He doesn't have evidence yet, but he can almost sense the creepy vibes coming off of Dexter, and it plants a seed of suspicion that never goes away. This matters because most homicide cops are desensitized. They've seen everything. Masuka's inappropriate comments make people roll their eyes, but they're still jokes. Dexter's enthusiasm isn't a joke. It's aesthetic appreciation. He's talking about dismemberment, like it's a magic trick, reconstructing the killer's moves with way too much excitement. That's a different category entirely. And a guy with Dokes' special forces background is built to notice that difference. For Dexter, this is just the beginning of a pattern. Anytime he recognizes another killer's style, he can't fully hide that flicker of recognition. He praises technique. He gets ahead of the evidence. He looks a little too at home among the dead. And every time he does it, Dokes files it away. Eventually, in puzzle he can't wait to solve. Right away, Dexter starts doing that thing that separates him from Masuka's dumb jokes. He doesn't crack one-liners. He walks the room, eyes bright, reconstructing the killer's moves step by step. He imagines the attack, the angle of the blade, the way the killer must have grabbed Jason, even the timing of the arterial spray. It's not just analysis. The camera lingers on his face, and you can see it. He's into this. There's a tiny smile, a spark in his eyes, his body leaning in like he's front row at a concert instead of standing over a dead student. Dexter's internal monologue only makes it creepier. He talks about appreciating the killer's work, admiring the efficiency of the cut, almost daydreaming about being in that position himself. It's the same forensic language he uses at every scene. But here, the subtext leaks through. He isn't just understanding the killer, he's vibing with him. And that vibe is exactly what Dokes picks up on. Dokes watches all of this, and you can practically see his suspicion level up in real time. He doesn't let it slide as Dexter being Dexter. Instead, he confronts him right there, snapping that Dexter's getting a hard-on from the blood and threatening to send him for a psych evaluation. That line isn't just a joke. It's Dokes openly saying what everyone else only half feels. This reaction is not normal, not for a cop, not for a lab geek, not for anyone. From Dokes' point of view, this is a turning point. Up to now, Dexter has been strange, maybe creepy, but still within the realm of socially awkward co-worker. The Jason scene pushes him past that. Dexter doesn't just understand killers as part of his job. He seems to enjoy them on a personal level. He sees patterns too fast, talks about the killer's mindset too easily, and looks way too happy doing it. A guy with special forces experience is going to clock that. There's still no actual evidence. No blood slides, no boat, no secret kill room. Just a face that lights up at the sight of a mutilated body. But Dokes moves from casual dislike into active monitoring. After Jason, he's not just calling Dexter a creep in the hallway. He's watching him, timing his absences, waiting for the next excuse to follow him out of the building. And when that next excuse comes, it won't be a random student murder. It'll be a case that hits much closer to home. And Dokes will be right on Dexter's heels when it happens. Recognition, not fetish. Why Dexter's instincts are so dangerous. And that case that hit calls out that the killer doesn't fit the crime. Wrong level of control. Wrong emotional tone. He even narrates the psychology. This guy wants attention. The real one wants intimacy. How does he know that? Because that's the same split he uses between his public mask and his private ritual. This gives him a huge investigative edge. He walks into a scene and can tell you where the killer stood, what they felt, what they needed from the kill. When everyone else is arguing about evidence, Dexter already has the answer, and eventually that always right streak stops feeling like brilliance and starts feeling uncanny. Even Masuka's like, dude, how did you see that? That edge is a double-edged sword. On the surface, it makes Dexter valuable. He can hide behind being the quirky blood guy who just gets killers. But there are moments where his insight cuts too deep, too fast, and you can see people pull back. They don't have words for it, so they land on the only label that makes sense. This dude is strange. Here's the imagine being Dokes in those rooms. You already hate Dexter's fake smile. You already clock his empty eyes. Now, every time a body drops, this lab geek is calling the killer's moves like he's seen the playbook. At a certain point, the question stops being, why is Dexter so creepy? And becomes, why does he understand killers better than anyone in the room? For Dexter, Dokes is the last person you want asking that question. Because very soon, Dokes is going to start lining up two columns in his head. Dexter's weird, too intimate reactions to violence, and Dexter's freakish accuracy about every major case. And once those two things form a pattern, Dokes won't just be watching Dexter's absences. He'll be watching the way Dexter's mind works, which is dangerously close to watching Dexter's secret. The Jeremy follow-up. When instincts become a pattern. And that brings us to the first thing we need to look at once those two columns start forming in Dokes' head. The Jeremy case is where Dexter's creepy accuracy stops looking like luck and starts looking like experience. In Season 1, Episode 10, Seeing Red, Dexter locks onto Jeremy Downs, this angry, traumatized kid who already has one body on his record. On paper, Jeremy is a juvenile who made a terrible mistake. Dexter doesn't see a mistake. He sees a future killer. He stalks Jeremy, tests him, practically narrates the kid's dark potential like he's looking in a cracked mirror. It's not just professional interest. Dexter is unusually invested in whether Jeremy will kill again, because that's literally the line Harry drew for him. Dexter corners Jeremy at the marina, confronts him about the thrill of killing. And it doesn't sound like a high five. It sounds like a warning. How does the lab geek call it so perfectly, so early, so often? The subtext is brutal. Dokes isn't just impressed that Dexter clocked Jeremy as dangerous. He's unnerved by how intimately Dexter seems to understand people who enjoy killing. It's one thing for a seasoned cop to read a suspect's body language. It's another for a blood spatter analyst to describe, almost word for word, what a young killer is going to do next, and then watch the evidence line up like Dexter had the script. Dokes doesn't have proof yet. What he does have is a pattern. This isn't the first case where Dexter was weirdly tuned in, but Jeremy cements it. Now, Dexter isn't just the quirky analyst who likes crime scenes too much. In Dokes' mind, he's someone who might share a mindset with the monsters they hunt. And once Dokes frames Dexter that way, every new case becomes a test. Is Dexter solving these murders or relating to them? That question is going to drive his next moves, and it's exactly what pushes him from side-eye in the hallway to full-on surveillance. From red flags to a file, Dokes quietly builds a case. Once, Dokes starts asking himself whether Dexter is solving murders or relating to them. Something important happens. The creep label turns into a working theory. He's not filing reports yet, but in his head, the case has already opened. How cops actually build cases long before any paperwork hits a desk. They don't start with a formal file. They start with mental notes, strange comments, bad vibes, little inconsistencies they tuck away for later. Dokes is doing exactly that with Dexter. Every weird scene, every bad excuse, every time Dexter's story doesn't quite line up, it all quietly goes on an internal Dexter board only he can see. By the end of Season 1, that board is already crowded. You've got Dexter's creepy enthusiasm at crime scenes, where he calls a brutal dismemberment neat, or breaks down blood patterns like he's reviewing art. You've got those perfect killer instincts, where he zeroes in on details that even seasoned detectives miss. Then there's Deb's kidnapping. Dexter is strangely unreachable, offers a flimsy timeline, and eventually shows up at the shipping yard with that ridiculous furniture from Thailand cover story. Dokes doesn't buy any of it. On top of that, there's Dexter's emotional flatness. Normal people at Miami Metro get rattled. They get angry, sad, something. Dexter just doesn't. Dokes clocks how he barely reacts when Deb is in danger, how he stands a little too calm around mutilated bodies, how his concern always feels one-stepping how he reacts at scenes to look more normal. Ironically, those adjustments only give Dokes more to study. All of this is crucial setup, because when we hit Season 2 and the Bay Harbor Butcher case explodes, Dokes isn't starting from zero. He already has a mental file full of red flags. The moment actual physical evidence surfaces, bodies, patterns, trophies, his private suspicion is going to collide with a very public investigation. And when that happens, Dexter's secret life stops being an abstract theory in one cop's head and becomes something much more dangerous. The real question is, when the Bay Harbor butcher hits the news, does Dokes see a case or a name? Season 2, Explosion, the Bay Harbor butcher, surfaces when the Bay Harbor butcher hits the news. Dokes isn't the only one seeing a case, instead of just a creepy story. Miami wakes up one morning to find Dexter's entire secret career bobbing to the surface. Is how fast everything escalates at the start of Season 2. We go from Dexter quietly wrapping bodies in plastic to a salvage crew accidentally dragging up one of his bags off the coast. Divers go down, cameras roll, and suddenly, it's not one body, it's dozens. All at once, the ocean that used to be Dexter's personal trash can turns into the biggest crime scene Miami Metro has ever had. This is the moment his private hobby officially becomes the Bay Harbor butcher case. There's no vague suspicion. No, maybe there's a serial killer out there. Talk. The FBI is called in. Lundy sets up shop, and the same department that laughs at Masuka's jokes is now staring at barrels of dismembered corpses, trying to reverse engineer a killer's mind. For Dexter, that killer is standing right next to them with a lab coat and a clipboard. The irony really kicks in. Dexter isn't just near the investigation. He is the investigation. He's the one analyzing cut marks he made, matching saw patterns he chose, and confirming that all these victims were wrapped, weighted, and dumped with frightening consistency. When he calmly explains the precision of the dismemberment, we know he's basically grading his own homework in front of the teacher. And notice how different this pressure is from Season 1. Before, it was one man's gut feeling, Dokes side-eyeing Dexter at crime scenes, clocking the strange work absences, calling him a creep. Now, it's institutional. It's the FBI, Miami Metro brass, press conferences, interagency task forces. The walls aren't closing in from one direction. They're closer to exposure than ever before. The blood slides, one tiny box that almost ends everything, and is sitting right between that federal task force and Dokes' obsession, is the most dangerous object in Dexter's entire life. A tiny wooden box full of glass. In a show about a guy who cleans up everything, this is the one thing he never cleans away. Is Dexter's ritual itself? Every time he kills, he doesn't just wrap the body, dump it from the slice of life, and call it a night. He takes a single drop of blood from the victim's cheek, presses it onto a microscope slide, lets it dry, and labels it. One kill, one slide. Then he goes home, pops off the front of his window air conditioner, and hides that neat little archive in a hollowed-out space no one's supposed to see. It's creepy, it's organized, and it's basically a serial killer's stamp collection. On paper, this is insane. For someone obsessed with avoiding trace evidence, Dexter has built the perfect case against himself. We're talking a direct chronological record of his murders, all in one convenient, portable box. If anyone in Miami Metro ever opens that thing, game over. No need for fiber analysis, no need for witness testimony. You've got dozens of victims, all tied to the department's favorite blood spatter analyst. It's the Bay Harbor butcher case, pre-packaged. The show doesn't treat the slides as just a cool character quirk. In Season 1, Episode 1, that box is basically Chekhov's gun. We see it early. We understand what it is, and the camera lingers just long enough to make us nervous. Then the writers let it sit there, while Dexter keeps killing, and we're left with this constant background tension. Who's going to find it first? Rita, Deb, or Dokes? Here's the... Dexter knows all of this. He's a forensics expert. He understands evidence better than anyone. So why keep the slides? Because emotionally, he needs them. They're proof that his work matters, a physical manifestation of the code of Harry. When he flips through those slides, he's not just reminiscing. He's reassuring himself that he's a purposeful killer, not a random monster. That psychological need almost destroys him, and we already know where this is heading. Eventually, in Season 2, Dokes tracks Dexter to that air conditioner and actually finds the box. The moment we've been dreading since the pilot finally happens. Darkness recognizing darkness, but this time with hard evidence in his hands. The blood slides become the single thread that, once pulled, nearly unravels Dexter's entire double life. So, when the Bay Harbor Butcher Task Force starts matching dismemberment patterns and dump sites, it doesn't take long before he catches that same black sedan, sitting just a little too perfectly, 2 cars behind. There's the marina surveillance. Dexter treats his boat, the slice of life, like a mobile crime scene, and Dokes can sense it. In one scene, Dexter says he's heading home, but Dokes watches him peel off toward the docks instead. That's not just a strange detour after a long day at Miami Metro. That's a pattern. Dokes hangs back in the shadows, eyes locked on Dexter, moving around the slip, clearly not just relaxing. One wrong timing on Dexter's part, and Dokes would be watching him hose down kill room plastic instead of fiberglass. The more Dokes presses, the more Dexter adapts, and ironically, makes himself look guiltier to a trained tail. Dexter starts taking random turns, doubling back, switching routes at the last second. To normal traffic, it's meaningless. To someone who's done real counter-surveillance, it screams, "I know you're there." In one nighttime scene, Dexter abruptly pulls into a remote area under the excuse of getting air, and Dokes just parks, waits, and watches. No friends, no bar, no date, just Dexter alone in the dark. Creepy doesn't even begin to cover it. The cat and mouse dynamic really spikes the danger. Every time Dexter diverts to shake Dokes, he risks leading him closer to a dump site or a prep location. Every time Dokes pushes just a bit further, he risks walking straight into a ritual kill. You can feel the tension in scenes where Dexter is scouting or setting up and suddenly senses that familiar presence nearby. One wrong door, one mistimed injection, and Dokes isn't just suspicious anymore. He's a witness. And for Dexter, this private surveillance is exactly what puts Dokes on a collision course with the truth. By tracking Dexter's off-duty movements instead of relying on official leads, Dokes eventually positions himself near the places Dexter thinks are invisible. His car, his boat, his apartment. That's how he ends up in the perfect spot to find the blood slides, the tiny trophies that connect Dexter to the Bay Harbor Butcher case. Once Dokes finally gets his hands on those slides, can Dexter talk his way out? Or is this the moment his secret life finally detonates? The marina, the boat, and the missing link. So once Dokes has those blood slides, Dexter's secret life is hanging by a thread. But there's another weak spot quietly pulsing in the background. The marina. The slice of life isn't just a prop. It's the artery that connects Dexter's day job at Miami Metro to the Bay Harbor Butcher dump site, is how completely Dexter relies on that boat. Every ritual is built around it. He stalks, he kills, he wraps the body in plastic, theme-friendly. That same visibility cuts both ways. Every fuel purchase, every docking fee, every casual wave from another boat owner is a potential breadcrumb that can be pulled later when the feds start asking who regularly takes late-night trips into murder water. Dokes gets this instinctively. He tails Dexter to the marina, watches him on the slice of life, and you can almost see the wheels turning. Quiet lab geek, advanced jujitsu, creepy fascination with blood, and a perfectly maintained boat that just happens to be ideal for hauling bodies. When Dokes starts digging into Dexter's life, the boat is always there, sitting in the background of the frame, like an extra character waiting to testify. Dokes isn't the only one who gets close. After he's framed and removed from the board, Lagerta eventually reopens the Bay Harbor Butcher file and does what bureaucrats do best. She goes to the paperwork, marina logs, ownership records, security reports. This is her hunting ground. She pulls patterns of who's out on the water, when and how often. Dexter's name doesn't scream killer on its own, but it keeps showing up near the center of the map. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Dexter has to keep going back. He can't just abandon the slice of life without raising even more suspicion. Maintaining that cover means more trips to the slip, more chances to be seen on a night he shouldn't be anywhere near the ocean, more opportunities for a random camera upgrade or a board guard to remember his face. If the marina had installed better surveillance a year earlier, if the harbor master had been forced to log every after-hours departure, if the FBI had cross-referenced dump dates with boat movements just a little more aggressively, the slice of life alone could have turned Dexter from helpful analyst into prime suspect. Once the water starts pointing back to him, can he keep hiding behind Dokes' ghost? Or does the Bay Harbor Butcher case come roaring back to life? When Dokes finds the slides, the closest he ever comes? So, if the slice of life and the Bay Harbor Butcher task force almost sink Dexter from the outside, what happens when the threat comes from right inside his living room wall? All those dump site patterns and FBI profiles are still just theory. One wooden box in Dexter's apartment turns that theory into hard evidence. We're in season 2, and Dokes has gone from calling Dexter a creepy lab geek to full-on shadowing him. He's suspended, angry, and has nothing left except this one case and his own suspicion. That's exactly when he breaks the biggest rule. This isn't lab work. This is a trophy collection. The look on his face isn't just horror, it's confirmation. Darkness recognizing darkness, but now with receipts. Procedurally, this is a nightmare scenario for Dexter. A Miami Metro sergeant, ex-Special Forces, already vocal about Dexter being a killer, is now holding physical evidence tying him to dozens of murders. No rumor, no vibe, no Dexter's a creep joke at the station. If Dokes walks these slides into IA or the FBI, the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation flips instantly. The friendly blood spatter analyst becomes the prime suspect, and his usual excuse of being helpful at crime scenes stops working the second those slides hit an evidence locker. And this really is the single closest he ever comes to being exposed by hard proof, because Dokes is credible. He's not Lila with a grudge, not a drunk witness, not a criminal trying to cut a deal. He's a cop with a box of blood, For both of them, Dexter moves first. He lures Dokes out to the cabin, planning to contain the damage. The episode ends with Dokes stepping out of the shadows, gun drawn, throwing the word butcher in Dexter's face. Now the trophies are out, the masks are off, and the next move decides who walks out of that cabin alive. The cabin standoff. Why Dexter doesn't end up in handcuffs? Dokes has the gun, Dexter has the box, and for a split second, it feels like the entire show is about to end in that cabin. So how do we go from Dexter Morgan, you're under arrest, energy, to the Bay Harbor butcher case, closing in Dexter's favor? Dokes doesn't walk in there as an executioner. He walks in as a cop. In that jungle cabin scene, he forces Dexter to open the lockbox, sees the blood slides, and you can watch his whole worldview snap into place. The creepy lab geek he's been stalking is suddenly the serial killer the FBI is hunting. He makes Dexter admit enough of the truth to confirm it's not some weird scientific excuse. But even with a confirmed monster in front of him, Dokes' instinct is, you're coming in alive. That integrity is exactly what keeps Dexter breathing. A less ethical enemy would have just pulled the trigger and sorted out the paperwork later. Dokes wants a clean arrest, proper chain of custody, the whole thing by the book. He locks Dexter up, plans to contact Lagerta, and keeps trying to talk him into surrendering. That buys hours. And in a show where one extra phone call could end a life, hours are an eternity. Then the universe throws in a wild card, Lila. In Season 2, Episode 10, she tracks Dexter's GPS, finds the cabin. He died near a kill room with trophies. Case closed, paperwork signed. Everyone goes home. What gets lost in the explosion is how razor-thin that margin really was. If Dokes had made one call to Lagerta, sent one photo of the slides, or survived just a few more hours, Dexter's entire double life ends in Season 2. Instead, a jealous pyromaniac accidentally hands him the perfect scapegoat, and the investigation that almost destroyed him becomes the shield that protects him, at least until the next person starts asking dangerous questions. Lagerta's doubt, the case that won't stay closed, that perfect scapegoat solves one problem for Dexter, but it accidentally creates another, a case that refuses to stay buried because one person at Miami Metro can't quite let go. And that person is Maria Lagerta. Is Lagerta's relationship with Dokes before the Bay Harbor butcher blows everything up. This isn't some random sergeant to her. Dokes is her guy. They came up together. She covered for his temper. He backed her play in the politics. In earlier seasons, you can feel that history in every scene where she defends him as a cop who may be intense, but is not a cold, methodical killer. So, when the evidence proves Dokes is the butcher, Lagerta is the only one in the room who doesn't exhale in relief. Everyone else gets closure. She gets cognitive dissonance. Dokes, the impulsive ex-special forces hothead, suddenly also planned dozens of meticulous dismemberments and kept trophies in a cabin. It fits on paper, but emotionally, it never tracks for her. We see that in the way she keeps circling back to the files. After the case is officially closed, there are scenes where Lagerta is alone in her office, reopening the Bay Harbor binders, staring at photos of the dismembered bodies, flipping through timeline charts. No big speech, no dramatic music cue, just that quiet, nagging suspicion that something is off. She starts asking those small, dangerous questions. Why would Dokes, who hates secrets and dirty cops, suddenly become a secret vigilante killer? How did he manage all this without leaving the kind of messy trail his temper usually does? She doesn't have a better suspect yet, and Dexter is nowhere near her radar. To her, Dexter is just the helpful lab guy who is almost a victim of Dokes himself. What she does do is refuse to fully emotionally sign off on the story. She'll voice it in little asides to colleagues like, Dokes was many things, but this, it sounds like grief, but it's actually the show planting a time bomb actually is. Miguel Prado isn't some random buddy from a bar. He's a high-profile assistant district attorney from a politically connected family, a guy who can walk into any crime scene and start calling shots. In the Season 3 premiere, Our Father, a routine stalking case goes sideways when Dexter accidentally kills Miguel's brother, Oscar, during what was supposed to be a clean, code-approved takedown. That one mistake flips the script. Instead of a nameless victim, Dexter suddenly has a grieving ADA watching his every move. On paper, Miguel and Dexter shouldn't work, but grief plus justice makes a creepy combination. Miguel latches onto Dexter as the only one who understands, wanting real consequences for killers who slip through the system. Dexter, starved for anyone who might accept his dark passenger, starts testing the waters. He gives Miguel little pieces of the truth disguised as righteous anger. When Miguel vents about a criminal walking free, Dexter doesn't just nod. He subtly defends the idea of someone taking that man out permanently. Dexter breaks his most important rule: control through secrecy. Instead of keeping Miguel at arm's length, he starts walking him through the code. Who deserves to die, how you verify the evidence, why you never kill out of pure emotion. In The Lion Sleeps Tonight and Turning Bimini's, we see Dexter explaining his process in disturbingly practical terms, turning a legal strategist into a student of murder. Once Miguel knows there is a system, there's always the risk he'll point the spotlight back at the teacher, and Miguel's position makes that risk enormous. As an assistant district attorney, he has access to active files, witness lists, and every major case Dexter's department is touching. When Dexter helps Miguel target Ellen Wolf, Miguel's courtroom rival, that's not just a personal vendetta. That's a disappearance directly tied to a public figure in the justice system. Suddenly, Dexter's extracurriculars are brushing up against the very cases Miami Metro and the DA's office are arguing in front of judges. Miguel doesn't run to the police, but his volatility is its own kind of exposure. He starts bending Dexter's code, pushing for kills that are about power and ego instead of proof. Their team-up bleeds into official investigations. Names Miguel whispers over drinks become bodies. Dexter has to hide from crime scene texts the next morning. One bad subpoena, one witness who saw the wrong car, and the Bay Harbor Butcher narrative could have snapped back toward the real killer. Eventually, the danger becomes literal. Witnessing. We watch Miguel clock everything. The plastic sheeting on the walls and floor, the roll of tape, the knives laid out with surgical precision. He sees Dexter's calm, almost bored demeanor as he explains the ritual, the way another cop might walk you through a crime scene diagram. It's creepy because Miguel isn't horrified. He's impressed. He even helps restrain the victim, turning this into a two-man operation. That's a totally new category of threat. If Miguel ever goes to La Guerta, he doesn't have to say, "Dexter's strange," or "Dexter gives me killer vibes." He can say, "He uses clear plastic to prevent blood spatter. He straps them down on a table. He cuts a cheek for blood. He keeps trophies." That's testimony with detail. Details you can build a case around. Imagine that in court. A respected assistant district attorney describing Dexter's tools, explaining how the plastic minimizes trace evidence, how the room is always somewhere disposable or easy to abandon. Suddenly, those Bay Harbor butcher theories about a methodical, forensically aware killer line up with an actual person who has the skills and access to make it happen. Miguel doesn't immediately weaponize that knowledge the smart way. He weaponizes Dexter. Once he's in the room, he starts pitching targets. Ellen Wolf, personal enemies, political obstacles. It stops being about the code and starts sounding like a hit list. That's where the risk quietly explodes, because personal or political kills are the ones that get missed least. People notice when a high-profile defense attorney or connected rival disappears. Dexter knows this. You can see the shift in his face every time Miguel pushes. The excitement of finally having someone who understands his darkness gets replaced by calculation and fear. If Miguel picks the wrong victim and Miami Metro actually digs deep, any strange pattern, plastic residue, specific cut marks, trophy behavior, could boomerang right back to the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation. And there's an even more uncomfortable angle. Miguel doesn't just know Dexter kills, he knows the process. He could describe the table, the angles of restraint, even Dexter's pre-kill talk. That's the kind of thing La Guerta could cross-reference with old crime scene photos and say, "We've seen this before." If Miguel had gone to her early or leaked those details to the right person, Dexter's kill rooms might have become a blueprint for reopening the Butcher case years sooner. For Miguel, trying to control a killer who lives by ritual is a bad long-term strategy. Dexter eventually realizes the only way to protect the secret is to a ritual. Here, Dexter's operating on betrayal and panic. He forges evidence about Ellen Wolf, realizes Miguel is out of control, and then fast-tracks him straight onto the table. So, Dexter overcorrects. He knows Miguel can't look like a Bay Harbor Butcher victim. No neat dismemberment, no ocean dump, no blood slides. Instead, he strangles Miguel, dumps the body in a vacant lot, and stages it as cartel payback. On paper, it's clever. Tie Miguel's death to his own dirty dealings, not to a mysterious, meticulous killer. The episode makes it clear how thin that excuse really is. The staging is broad strokes, not the obsessive detail we usually see. Enter La Guerta, who blows up that plan almost instantly. Unlike most of Dexter's random targets, Miguel is her friend, her almost lover, and her political golden boy. She's personally invested in this case in a way we rarely see. She doesn't just accept the cartel narrative. She quietly reopens Ellen Wolf's murder, retraces Miguel's movements, and even pulls phone records. That's a nightmare combo. Emotional drive plus institutional power. And the creepy overlap risk shows up. Miguel's body is dumped in Miami, in Dexter's hunting ground, with signs of controlled violence and post-mortem staging. If anyone had cross-referenced dump sites, victim profiles, and Miguel's sudden close relationship with Dexter, the suspicion trail could have curved toward our favorite blood spatter analyst. It's not a perfect Bay Harbor match, but it rhymes just enough that a more thorough review might have spotted the pattern. What really makes this dangerous is how far Dexter drifts from Harry's code. He's improvising. He's forging documents, lying to Rita, juggling wedding plans, and killing Miguel all in the same compressed window. That's how mistakes happen. One missed fiber, one camera, one witness catching them together near the lot. And the whole ADA execution becomes the thread that unravels everything. For La Guerta, the show tilts fate in Dexter's favor. Miguel's brother, Ramon, melts down. The department wants closure, and the cartel story is just convenient enough to stick. Dexter walks away, but he doesn't walk away clean. Miguel joins a growing list. Brian, Dokes, Lila. Now, Miguel. People deeply connected to Dexter who die in strange circumstances. Eventually, that web gets too tight to ignore. And when La Guerta comes back years later, reopening the Bay Harbor butcher case, all those isolated tragedies start to look like one long, connected crime scene wrapped around a neighbor. Sound familiar? In Season 4, Episode 3, when they realize Trinity has a repeating pattern of 3 victims in each city, Dexter isn't just impressed by the technique, he's studying it like a blueprint for his own future. If Trinity can do this for decades, why can't he? But the more he chases that question, the more cracks appear in his own cover. Dexter starts taking riskier surveillance trips, following Trinity alone, improvising excuses to Rita that barely make sense. Late-night stakeouts become extra shifts. Random disappearances become errands. You can almost feel the suspicion building around him, even when no one can name it yet. The stress bleeds into the office, too. He's tired, distracted, missing obvious work tasks, while simultaneously obsessing over the Trinity crime scenes, like their personal homework. And here's the key upgrade from earlier seasons. He now has multiple people living in his house who can track his behavior. A wife who notices when he doesn't come to bed. Kids who see when dad's gone at breakfast. Rita hears the lies, sees the mood swings, feels the distance. Even if she can't say serial killer, she knows something is off. The domestic setting turns every late night into a potential red flag. Dexter doesn't treat Trinity as a warning. He treats him as a project. He inserts himself into Arthur's life, plays the creepy friend, and drags his secret hunting closer and closer to his front door, to his. And the show is quietly telling us this is going to cost him, because the ultimate proof that Dexter can't separate his hunting from his home life isn't a bloodslide or a case file. It's Rita. Her fate becomes the most brutal example of what happens when his 2 worlds finally collide. We're not there yet, but the seeds are all over Season 4. The question isn't if this double life will explode. It's who gets hit when it does. Rita, lies, and the cracks at home. If Dexter's job at Miami Metro is one ticking time bomb, his marriage in Season 4 is the other. While he's chasing Trinity like it's the most important case of his life, Rita is quietly building a very different kind of file on him. Late nights, strange injuries, and excuses that would barely fool Masuka is how flimsy Dexter's cover story becomes the second he moves to the suburbs. On paper, he's the tired new dad and overworked blood guy. In practice, he's disappearing for extra shifts, missing family events, and showing up with bruises that don't match the story. After one of his clashes with Trinity, he comes home battered and blames it on dropping the TV, or some random moving accident. Rita doesn't buy it instantly. Rita is looking for a relatable explanation, not a serial killer secret. That domestic suspicion still hurts him. The more Rita pushes, the more he has to improvise on the fly, and that pressure leaks into the hunt. He rushes his surveillance on Trinity, cuts corners with his trophies, and keeps his kill tools hidden in a family home that now has 3 kids wandering around. Every lie to Rita is time he's not double-checking a crime scene or cleaning a car trunk. If he makes one fewer wipe, that's a real forensic trail. What's really wild is how close this comes to being a totally different show. Imagine if Rita had been more confrontational or investigative. Follow him once. Call Deb to verify a late night at the lab. Ask a neighbor if his car actually left at 2 a.m. She could have mapped out his double schedule without ever touching a blood slide. Domestic suspicion alone could have put Miami Metro on the Bay Harbor butcher years earlier, because eventually those cracks at home don't just threaten his marriage, they threaten the whole mask. And the next person who starts tugging on those loose threads won't stop at maybe he's cheating. They're going to follow the lies all the way to a kill room. Who gets curious first? The Trinity obsession, almost caught by his own curiosity. And in terms of curiosity, nobody beats Dexter himself. Those loose threads we just talked about, Dexter is the one who starts tugging hardest on someone else's mask. He doesn't just hunt Trinity, he moves into Trinity's life, like it's a long-term undercover case. Under the alias Kyle Butler, Dexter starts attending Arthur Mitchell's church, hanging around his charity projects, and eventually sitting at his family dinner table. And season 4, episode 4, and onward, we watch him do the exact thing Dokes once did to him. Shadow every move, test every story, stare way too long. Only this time, Dexter's the one, with the fake name and the bad excuse for why he's always around. It's a creepy mirror image of the Dokes dynamic. That double infiltration comes with a price. To Miami Metro, Dexter is supposedly buried in the Trinity case as a forensics guy, running blood work and helping Lundy. To Rita, he's at Narcotics Anonymous, or stuck late at the lab. Meanwhile, the real Dexter is in a suburb in Tampa, helping Arthur build houses and coach his son. Every new Kyle Butler scene requires a matching lie somewhere else. NA meetings, step work, a sponsor. It stacks fast. The more he chases Trinity's secret, how this killer has a wife, kids, a house, and decades of kills, the thinner Dexter's own cover gets. We get those near-miss moments where he's almost a case. Remember, they're already hunting Trinity. A composite sketch, a church sign-in sheet, a charity roster. Any of that could eventually lead back to Dexter Morgan. And on the flip side, if Miami Metro had seriously cross-referenced witness statements, hotel logs, and Trinity sightings with Dexter's constant NA excuses, they would have noticed their blood guy orbiting the same killer they were chasing. His curiosity about Trinity's longevity blinds him to how incriminating that proximity looks on paper. This is the moment where the Bay Harbor butcher almost exposes himself without a single blood slide. All it would have taken was one suspicious detective, one bored FBI analyst, or one more question from Arthur. So when that house of cards finally starts to wobble, Dexter has to make a brutal choice. Keep studying Trinity's balance, or eliminate the living mirror that's about to reflect everything back at him. Rita's death, the exposure that almost was. And that brutal choice has consequences way beyond Dexter and Trinity, because the perfect study subject doesn't just implode Dexter's system, it blows up his family, literally. We go from Dexter, marveling at Arthur's balance, to the most disturbing mirror the show ever gives us. Rita's body in the bathtub, Harrison crying on the bathroom floor, sitting in her blood. That scene is designed to stop you breathing for a second. It's not just shock value, it's a callback. Suddenly, we're back to Dexter as a child, found in a pool of his mother's blood. The show is basically saying, you wanted to play with another serial killer? Congratulations, you just recreated your own origin story. It's one of those moments where the case, the psychology, and the family drama all collide in one horrible image. And here's where the near exposure kicks in. Trinity didn't just kill some random woman, he killed Dexter Morgan's wife. That directly ties Dexter's household to the same serial killer Dexter has been obsessively, secretly hunting off the books. If anyone in Miami Metro really sits down and asks, why Rita? The answers get dangerous very fast. On paper, Rita is a strange target for Arthur. She doesn't fit his usual pattern, his usual ritual, his usual anything. So the natural investigative question becomes, what made her special? The show lets the cops default to wrong place, wrong time, a bit too quickly. If this were in Season X, Episode Y, of a more procedural series, we'd get the detective on the whiteboard, connecting Rita, Trinity, and Dexter's proximity to both. We do see an investigation. There are crime scene texts, reports. The show never quite pushes that question as far as it could, and that's deliberate. We stay in the emotional fallout instead of a full internal affairs breakdown. Rita's death is the moment where Dexter's two worlds slam together so violently that exposure feels inevitable. Family life, secret life, and official case all share one crime scene. After this, every close call feels less hypothetical, because we've already seen what happens when the Bay Harbor butcher's mask slips at home. And the scary part is, Rita isn't the last time that mask cracks. She's just the first time it leaves permanent public damage. Season 5. Lumen, Witness, and Accomplice. Rita's death blows a hole in Dexter's cover, but Season 5 does something even more dangerous. It lets a stranger walk straight into the kill room and stay there. Lumen isn't just another love interest or damsel in distress. She's the first person outside Dexter's family to fully meet the dark passenger and live to tell the tale. We meet her as a victim, one of the barrel girls that Jordan Chase's torture ring brutalized. Dexter finds her in Boyd Fowler's house, terrified, chained, and barely coherent. In any other episode, this would be a rescue. Full stop. In Season 5, Episode 3, Dexter's cleanup goes sideways. Lumen sees the plastic. She sees Boyd on the table. She sees Dexter with the knife. From that moment, she's not just a survivor. She's a witness to the Bay Harbor butcher's exact methods. As their connection grows, Dexter does something that would have made Dokes' head explode. He opens the ritual. He lets Lumen into the planning, the stalking, the code. In the campsite scene with Cole, Lumen helps lure him in, stands in the kill room, and watches Dexter wrap the plastic, prepare the tools, and deliver the speech. Every step of his supposedly secret process now exists in someone else's memory, with no bloodslide or trash bag to make it disappear. And because they're hunting a whole group of rapists instead of a single killer, the mission forces Dexter into sloppier, more public risks. There's the warehouse break-in, where Lumen almost gets spotted by security, the hotel confrontation, where she impulsively attacks one of the men in broad daylight, and that boat dock scene where she's running around with a gun, while Miami Metro is actively working the same case from the other side. Dexter's usual excuse of just a lab geek doesn't play as well when there's a panicked blonde woman tied to his movements. Her presence constantly complicates cleanup. Dexter can't just vanish bodies on his own timetable. He has to manage Lumen's trauma, her impatience, and her need to see each killer slipping at the exact moment Miami Metro is watching every ritual detail under a microscope. Is how the Doomsday Killer case weaponizes Dexter's own obsessions against him. Travis Marshall's murders aren't just brutal, they're elaborately staged biblical tableaus. The four horsemen, the angel wings, the snakes, each scene is a sermon written in blood. For a killer who already frames his life around Harry's code, suddenly every crime scene is a theological debate Dexter can't stop having with himself. That internal tug of war between faith and the dark passenger gets even messier because now he's also a single dad. Harrison is older, asking questions, needing actual parenting instead of just a babysitter. So, in Season 6, Episode 1, when Dexter drags Harrison to his high school reunion just to hunt an old jock-turned-killer, we see the new pattern: rushed kills, bad excuses, and way too little planning. He literally is a victim wrapped in plastic in a classroom while his toddler is down the hall. What could possibly go wrong? Look at the church. Once Dexter identifies Travis and Geller, that abandoned church becomes his private ritual space, which is already a terrible idea in a citywide serial killer case. Miami Metro is cataloging every doomsday murder, every symbol, every scrap of evidence. Dexter is sneaking into the epicenter of the investigation, leaving his tools there and assuming no one will ever connect it. We watch him bolt out of that church more than once, scrambling because Deb calls or the cops are shifting resources. Those rushed exits create some of his sloppiest near misses. In one scene, he's forced to flee a doomsday tableau just ahead of the responding units, barely wiping down what he touched. Another time, he's in the church with Travis when Deb is coordinating a search pattern that almost would have sent uniforms straight to Dexter's kill room. We're one mistyped address away from Dexter standing over a body while his own sister kicks in the door. And because the Doomsday case is so high profile, every mistake is amplified. The forensics team is hyper-focused. LaGuerta is watching clearance rates. The media is circling. If Dexter leaves a partial print, a stray fiber, even a recognizable knot on one of Travis's victims, it's not just background noise anymore. It's evidence that gets photographed, logged, and debated in the briefing room he sits in every morning. For Dexter, all of this pressure builds toward the most dangerous in the entire series: Deborah herself walking into that church. While the season spends episodes teasing near catches and close calls, the real near miss is that Dexter still believes he can compartmentalize everything: faith, fatherhood, and killing. Sees him drive the knife straight into Travis's chest. Her reaction is not subtle. She freezes, eyes wide, literally unable to process what she's looking at. For a second, she does what Deb always does when reality is too much. She tries denial. She keeps saying his name, like maybe if she says Dexter enough times, the scene will rearrange itself into something that makes sense. The blood, the plastic, the terrified man turning into a corpse in front of her. None of that leaves room for a clean misunderstanding. And this is one of the only times Dexter doesn't even try a halfway decent excuse. No self-defense, no he attacked me, not even a fake case connection. He makes a split-second choice to admit what this really is. He tells Deb he's been doing this for a long time. That simple admission is actually huge, because it means someone with full emotional access to Dexter also suddenly has full institutional access to Miami Metro's resources and could blow up his secret completely. Up to this point, everyone who got close either lacked proof, lacked power, or ended up dead. Dokes, Lila, Miguel, Rita. Deb is different. As lieutenant, she can pull files, redirect cases, quietly test evidence. She could walk back through every Bay Harbor butcher file and see Dexter's fingerprints all over the patterns. So, why doesn't she just arrest him on the spot? The answer is that Deb's love and trauma kick in faster than her badge. This is the same sister who built her whole identity around protecting and being protected by Dexter. She's fresh off therapy, wrestling with those strange, almost romantic feelings the show leans into. And now, the one stable person in her life is revealed as a killer. Her morality doesn't disappear, but it short circuits. She knows what the law says. She just can't physically pull the trigger on turning her brother in. From here on out, every near catch runs through Deb first. She's the one steering cases away from Dexter, losing evidence, shutting down LaGuerta's suspicion, and literally standing between Dexter and a jail cell. But that also makes her the biggest liability he's ever had. Because the next time an investigation gets close, the real question won't be, did Dexter do it? It'll be, how long can Deb keep covering for him before she breaks? Season 7, Quinn, Nadia, and the net tightening. And right when Deb becomes Dexter's full-time damage control, the universe hands Miami Metro, the one detective you really don't want, sniffing around a secret serial killer, beak. Then Speltzer falls to his death after escaping, and Dexter's excuse about being in the right place at the right time sounds thin. Quinn doesn't have proof, but you can see the gears turning. Why does chaos keep resolving itself exactly in Dexter's favor? Quinn's not running an official case file on Dexter. He's doing the sloppy, off-the-books version. He asks casual questions. He notices when Dexter's timeline doesn't quite match. He shows up at crime scenes and watches Dexter a second too long. In one scene, Dexter's eagerness around the Koshka-related bodies feels almost Dokes adjacent. Another cop quietly registering that this guy is a little too comfortable with murder. Deb sees all of this and goes into quiet panic mode. She's juggling LaGuerta's Bay, harbor butcher theory on one side, and Quinn's loose suspicion on the other. So she starts managing Quinn the way she used to manage Dokes, shutting down his comments about Dexter, redirecting conversations, reminding him he's on thin ice with internal affairs. Every time Quinn drifts toward Dexter, Deb throws him a distraction, usually involving his own bad choices. Dexter plays his part too, leaning into the harmless lab rat persona. He covers Quinn's debts here, helps on a case there, subtly turning Quinn's guilt and gratitude into a buffer. It never fully erases the suspicion, but it muddies it. Is Dexter dangerous, or is Quinn just projecting because he's the one in bed with a crime syndicate? For Dexter, That ambiguity is its own risk. Quinn never gets the smoking gun, but his proximity to the truth means Deb is now hiding her brother from someone inside her own squad room, not just from the badge at large. And as the season moves toward LaGuerta's final push, that overlapping pressure, Quinn's instincts, Deb's secret, and Dexter's mounting body count, creates a department where it only takes one more bad night for everything to snap. LaGuerta reopens. Bay Harbor, the past comes back. And that one more bad night shows up wearing LaGuerta's badge. We all know where this ends. LaGuerta dying in that shipping container. But how do we get from a closed Bay Harbor butcher case to her quietly building a file that points straight at Dexter? Is the catalyst. In Season 7, Episode 1, when they pull those old barrels from the water and LaGuerta finds a single blood slide at the scene, everything snaps back into focus. That slide shouldn't exist. Dokes was dead. The case was closed. Yet, here's the exact same style of trophy that proved he was the butcher. It's a tiny, creepy piece of plastic, but for LaGuerta, it's like Dokes reaching out from the grave to say, the coincidences start piling up faster than Dexter's excuses. What makes this stretch so dangerous is that LaGuerta doesn't leap straight to Dexter is a serial killer. She gets there methodically. First, she proves to herself that Dokes was likely framed. The cabin explosion, the planted slides in his car, the way he was conveniently isolated from the team. None of it feels organic. Then she asks the real question. If Dokes was chasing the butcher, who had both the access and the skill to turn the entire case against him? Dexter suddenly fits every angle. He's at the marina. He's on the files. He's the one person who could manipulate blood, scenes, and lab results without raising alarms. Eventually, her suspicion crystallizes into a profile. The Bay Harbor butcher isn't an outsider. He's a trusted insider hiding in plain sight. And that's what makes this phase echo Dokes so strongly. For the second time, someone inside the institution, with real power and proximity, is circling the full truth about Dexter Morgan. The difference now is that LaGuerta is building a case, not just a hunch, and the walls are about to close in from the inside. The shipping yard trap. Dexter almost caught red-handed. If LaGuerta's reopened Bay Harbor butcher case is the walls closing in, the shipping yard trap is the moment those walls almost slam shut on Dexter's face. This isn't a vague suspicion anymore. This is LaGuerta trying to catch a serial killer in the act, with handcuffs practically already in her pocket, is how calculated her plan really is. LaGuerta doesn't just confront Dexter in an office and hope he slips. She stages a kill box. She has Estrada, the drug dealer tied to Dexter's mother and Harry's past, conveniently escape into a remote shipping container area on New Year's Eve. For LaGuerta, this is perfect bait, a living reminder of Dexter's origin story. Someone she believes Dexter won't be able to resist hunting. It's the institutional version of dangling a blood slide in front of him. On paper, the logistics are airtight. LaGuerta arranges surveillance around the docks, has backup units on standby, and positions herself close enough to observe, but far enough to let Dexter incriminate himself. She fully expects him to show up armed, in full killer mode, and once he does, the Bay Harbor butcher case goes from theory to closed file. No more creepy excuses about furniture from Thailand at the shipping yard this time. Just a CSI analyst caught red-handed in a murder scene he created. LaGuerta underestimates one variable the same way Dokes did. Deeb. Deborah's response is the emotional core of this whole episode. She's already been wrestling with the possibility, that horrifying choice. Deb turns her gun away from Dexter and shoots Lagerta. In one shot, she kills the only institutional voice still building a real case and saves the very killer Lagerta was trying to stop. It's the cleanest near catch the system ever gets, and it dies on a shipping yard floor. Or does it? Because the fallout from that one bullet doesn't stay buried in a container forever. Killing Lagerta, the point of no return. The fallout doesn't stay in that shipping container. It follows them everywhere. Because once Deb pulls that trigger, we're not just talking about Dexter skating past another close call. We're talking about the law itself, bending and breaking to protect a killer. Is the emotional weight of that scene? Deb isn't killing some random perp. She's killing her mentor, her boss, the woman who promoted her. In Season 7, Episode 12, she literally steps over the line Lagerta draws on the floor and chooses Dexter. That's not just a dramatic image. It's Deb crossing from cop to accomplice in one move. The badge doesn't mean the same thing after that. The law used to be her anchor. Now it's the thing she has to lie to every single day she walks into Miami Metro. Miami Metro has to process Lagerta's death somehow. So we get this incredibly bleak, official story. Lagerta and Estrada kill each other in a chaotic confrontation. Case closed. On paper, it's neat. In the bullpen, it's anything but. Batista is shattered. Quinn is suspicious in that vague Quinn way. And everyone feels that strange, creepy wrongness you get when the facts don't match the person they knew. Nobody can prove it, but the idea that Lagerta just went rogue never fully lands. The institution accepts an excuse that keeps Dexter safe, but it swallows a trauma it never really digests. That bullet doesn't just protect Dexter, it detonates Deb. From that point on, her guilt is the real ongoing investigation. She quits the force, drives drunk, hooks up with a hit-and-run case, and keeps orbiting Dexter like she wants him to, either save her or confess. When she literally tries to turn him in at one point, you can feel how close the secret is to spilling. She's both the person most likely to expose him and the least capable of following through, because admitting what he is means admitting what she did for him. And here's the twisted irony. By eliminating Lagerta, Dexter removes the last truly dangerous institutional hunter. Dokes is dead. The Bay Harbor butcher case is solved. Lagerta's files are neutralized. On a procedural level, he's never been safer. But that safety and spiraled into drugs and self-loathing. Enter Dr. Evelyn Vogel, the creepy psychopath whisperer who claims she helped Harry design the code. Suddenly, Dexter isn't just a killer with a system. He's a case study. And while he's trying to process that, the brain surgeon starts leaving pieces of victims' brains as trophies, turning Miami into one big therapy session from hell. All the previous secrets are baked into every scene. Dokes framed as the Bay Harbor butcher. Lagerta dead in a shipping container. Rita murdered because Dexter underestimated Trinity. Deb complicit in multiple bodies. That isn't just backstory, it's psychological weight. He hesitates more. He rationalizes faster. He reaches for emotional excuses instead of the code when he decides he wants a normal life with Hannah and Harrison. That fantasy sits on top of a graveyard of people who got close to the truth and paid for it. So we start seeing a different kind of sloppiness, not rookie mistakes, but emotionally driven ones. Dexter hides evidence from Vogel, then trusts her, then doubts her again. He lets himself get pulled into Deb's breakdown instead of securing crime scenes. In one episode, he leaves the brain surgeon alive because he's too busy chasing the idea of leaving Miami with Hannah. That's not the meticulous Bay Harbor butcher. That's a man trying to outrun his own case file. There are near misses everywhere. Deb almost confesses to Quinn. Matthews keeps poking at LaGuerta's final investigation. The brain surgeon targets Vogel and circles closer to Dexter's real identity. Nothing fully detonates because the show is saving the explosion for later. Season 8 ends with Dexter faking his death in the storm, abandoning Deb's body, and disappearing. On paper, he's escaped again. Emotionally, that's the moment the bill comes due. Cut to Iron Lake and Dexter. New blood. And he's Jim Lindsay, mild-mannered guy selling hunting gear in a tiny town. No kills for 10 years. No blood slides. It looks clean. But the patterns haven't changed. They've just been on ice. One arrogant rich kid, one impulsive murder in the snow. And suddenly, we're back in familiar territory. Hidden bodies, tampered evidence, a killer improvising under pressure. And then Harrison shows up. He's not just Dexter's son. He's a living mirror of all those old compromises. Harrison sees the same strange calm, the same attraction to violence, the same lies. He's also the one person Dexter can't easily manipulate or frame, like Dokes or LaGuerta. For Dexter, a teenager with abandonment issues is a terrible place to store your biggest secret. So the real suspense becomes, will Harrison be the final witness who forces the truth out? Or the next apprentice who... Meanwhile, Iron Lake gives Dexter a fresh hunting ground, and he can't resist. Kurt Caldwell, the drug dealer, the serial predator. Dexter starts building a brand new body count. This time, he's not the anonymous Miami ghost. It's a small town. People notice when the local gunsmith disappears, when the drug supplier vanishes, when a police officer ends up dead in the woods. That officer, Logan, is the real turning point. For years, Dexter has avoided killing cops because that's the kind of victim that brings institutional heat. In Iron Lake, cornered and desperate, he snaps Logan's neck just to escape. Compare that to the Bay Harbor butcher era. Back then, Dexter was meticulous about avoiding anything that would trigger a full-blown internal investigation. Here, he breaks his own code in one panicked move. And Angela Bishop, the police chief, suddenly has a cop killer on her hands. Angela is where all the old cases come roaring back. She already has a missing person link to Hannah and Jim from that CSI convention. Then she gets the anonymous letter pointing her to the Bay Harbor butcher. She pulls the old Miami case files, studies the dismemberment patterns, the dump sites, the blood work that Dokes never got to see. When she finds the titanium screw from Matt Caldwell's leg in Dexter's fire pit, that's her Bay Harbor butcher moment. Physical evidence plus a pattern of rationalizing murder. Harrison becomes the ultimate witness because he doesn't just see one kill. He sees the whole operating system. He watches Dexter justify Logan's death as necessary, the same way he justified Brian, Lila, Miguel, LaGuerta, everyone. In that cabin confrontation, Harrison forces Dexter to admit the truth out loud. It was never only about saving people. It was about feeding something inside him. That's not just a confession to a crime. It's a confession to a lifetime. So no, Dexter isn't marched into a Miami courtroom in handcuffs. For him, his jury is a single teenage boy with a rifle and a lifetime of trauma. When Harrison pulls the trigger, it's the first time Dexter truly pays a price that matches the damage he's done. It's accountability delivered by the one person he couldn't frame, gaslight, or outmaneuver. The only real question left is, once Dexter's gone, does that dark passenger die with him, or just change drivers? Putting it all together, how many times should Dexter have been caught? So, when Harrison walks away and that rifle shot echoes, we're left with a brutal question. How many times should Dexter have already been dead or in handcuffs before that moment ever happened? To answer that is the 4 big fault lines under his whole life. There are the practical absences and flimsy even catches him dumping blood into the ocean. On its own, one aggressive sergeant is survivable. Combine that with Dexter's late nights, his weird fascination at crime scenes, and the Bay Harbor Butcher Task Force building a profile that matches him. That's a statistical miracle keeping him free. The blood slides are the purest example of you did this to yourself. When Dokes finds them in the air conditioner, that's physical evidence that should end the show. Only Lila blowing up the cabin, random, selfish, completely unrelated to the actual case, saves Dexter. That's not skill. That's luck and someone else's terrible ethics bailing him out. And it keeps happening. Miguel Prado learns Dexter's secret and starts freelancing as a killer. Trinity's connection to Rita puts a Bay Harbor-style butcher in Dexter's literal kitchen. Deb walks in on a kill in season 6 and instantly becomes an institutional risk because she's both a witness and a lieutenant. LaGuerta reopens the Bay Harbor Butcher case, follows the marina, the boat, the slide box, and almost drags the whole thing into court. Then, years later, Angela in New Blood quietly rebuilds that entire case from scratch in a tiny town with a smaller budget and better follow-through. Notice what never actually takes him down. Not the forensics, not the FBI, not Miami Metro. It's never the system. It's always one person who refuses to look away. From a realistic standpoint, Dexter probably should have been caught at Deb's kidnapping, at the blood slides, during LaGuerta's investigation, or by Angela's file alone. The show is about how long someone can outrun inevitability when luck, other people's ethics, and institutional blind spots keep buying them time. The only question now is, after Dexter, who's next on that clock? Why Dokes was right. Gut instinct as real evidence. And that brings us back to the one person who didn't need a file, a blood slide, or a Bay Harbor Butcher task force to know something was wrong. Sergeant James Dokes. If inevitability is always ticking in the background of Dexter's life, Dokes is the alarm clock that went off way too early. It is how fast Dokes' radar lit up. From almost the first crime scene, he's watching Dexter the way a predator watches another predator. Everyone else sees a quiet blood guy doing his job. Dokes sees the strange way Dexter leans in, a little too close. The creepy fascination with Castoff, the total lack of normal revulsion. In those early scenes, he doesn't have a case. He has a feeling, but that feeling is dead on. Dokes' background matters. At the right-wrong time, that syncs with the boat trips to the dumping grounds. The blood slides that eventually almost expose Dexter, those are just a forensic version of what Dokes already knew. This guy treats murder like a hobby, and that's the tragedy. The one cop whose instincts beat the entire system dies labeled as the monster he was trying to stop. Dokes doesn't just lose his life. His name becomes the official excuse that lets Dexter walk away clean. The case file says, Bay Harbor Butcher, James Dokes. The reality is, Bay Harbor Butcher, the guy Dokes was chasing. So Dokes ends up as the embodiment of the show's central irony. The system actually had its best, purest shot at Dexter in season 2. And it wasn't a task force or a lab result. It was one angry sergeant who refused to be fooled. That chance literally blows up in a cabin. And from then on, every investigation is chasing the shadow of a man Dokes already saw clearly. The only question left is, when the system fails that hard, once, how many more times can Dexter slip through before someone finally does what Dokes started? The inevitability of the dark passenger. Could Dexter ever really win? When you look at that blown-up cabin and Dokes' body being used as an excuse, it feels like Dexter just dodged the big one. Case closed, right? This isn't a happy reset button. It's the moment the noose quietly tightens. From season 1 onward, every near-catch Dexter survives leaves shrapnel behind. Dokes dies, but Deborah absorbs the trauma of losing a colleague, and later, without knowing it, helps protect the real killer. LaGuerta spends years with a lingering suspicion. Rita lives with unexplained absences and strange behavior. Each episode where Dexter wriggles free doesn't erase the danger. It creates new people with half-formed memories, unresolved questions, and emotional scars. The circle of those who almost know keeps expanding. That's where Harry's code stops being just a rulebook and starts looking like a survival algorithm. The code is designed to minimize exactly those ripples. Kill only those who deserve it. Keep emotion out of it. Never involve loved ones. Never rush. When Dexter breaks those pillars, the show immediately ties it to a spike in risk. In season 2, episode 10, he lets his anger at Lila push him into sloppy, emotional decisions, and she responds by blowing up his life, literally and figuratively. In season 3, he lets Miguel Prado inside the secret, violating Harry's most basic warning, and suddenly, there's another killer operating off a corrupted version of the code. Every time he kills for personal revenge, or to protect his ego, or to clean up a mess he'd do. Jim Lindsay is just Dexter trying to reboot the code after everything we've tracked in this timeline. But the pattern is the same. Emotional killings, a cop girlfriend, a son dragged into the secret. Harrison pulling the trigger isn't just punishment for one bad night in Iron Lake. It's the end result of a life where Dexter almost got caught and never truly stopped. So here's the question. Out of all these near catches, which one felt like the real ending to you? Was it Dokes at the cabin, LaGuerta at the shipping container, or some smaller scene where the mask slipped just a little too far? Because next, we're going to walk through those moments and see which should have been the end, actually came closest to closing the case for good. Your turn. Which close call should have ended? Dexter. So, now that we've walked through those moments and seen just how many times the case should have closed on Dexter Morgan, we have to flip it back on us as viewers. Because from season 1 all the way to New Blood, this story is basically a highlight reel of, there's no way he gets out of this. And then he does, is just how early the universe started throwing red flags at him. In season 1, episode 7, we've got Dexter at that Jason R. crime scene, a little too excited, a little too fascinated by the blood, while Dokes just stares at him like, "You are not a normal lab geek." From there, it only escalates. Strange work absences, creepy crime scene behavior, excuses that barely make sense, and a cop with special forces instincts watching every move. Then, season 2 turns that suspicion into an actual case. Dokes finds the blood slides. He follows Dexter to the cabin. He literally has the Bay Harbor Butcher in front of him. If this were any other killer, that's the end credits right there. No fake explosion, no Lila intervention, just Dokes calling it in, and Dexter's secret on the evening news. Was that the real ending for you? Should the story have stopped the moment those slides clinked together in Dokes' hand? The show doesn't stop. It doubles down. Miami Metro hunts the butcher using evidence Dexter himself processed. LaGuerta connects dots, gets shut down, and then eventually comes back in season 7 with that shipping yard trap. She has Dexter and Deb at the scene, the gas can, the history, the motive, and no good excuse for why they're both there. Deb's choice in that church with Travis was already the turning point. The second she protects Dexter, instead of arresting him, we're in a different universe